Hi, and welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Choukouriyah Arinloye. I'm a computer scientist from Benin Republic, and today I am more than excited to be having a discussion on tech and tech careers with a wonderful woman, Naela Sarras. She is the Vice President of the Stakeholder Committee at ICANN. Naela has a strong experience in internet governance, intellectual property, as well as domain names. But before starting, allow me to quickly take you through what Talking Tech is. So, Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech. It's been recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2022. Girls in ICT Day is an international event marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. The objective is to help create a global environment to encourage young women to consider studies and careers in the field of ICT, information and communication technologies. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, UNICC, and the Office of the UN General Secretary or Secretary General or Envoy on Youth, and is in support of Equals, the global partnership for gender equality in the digital age. So, hi Naela, and thank you for joining me. To kick things off, I'll kindly ask you to introduce yourself to our audience so that they can know more about you and your current position. So over to you, Naila.
Thank you, Choukouriyah. Thank you for affording me this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm really excited to be having this talk, and thank you for the organizers that made this series possible. My name is Naela Sarras, as you said earlier. I am currently the Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement for the North America region here at ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. Stakeholder engagement at ICANN is centered around bringing people together to work on issues that are related to internet and internet governance and access to internet, and that's really our job here as the stakeholder engagement team here at ICANN.
Great, thank you for your presentation. Nice to meet you again. My very first question for you today is about your beginning. So, Naila, I would like to know how and when you started with technology.
Yes, thank you. So I started a long time ago. I won't give you a number of years, but it was a long time ago, I can say that. It really started with my university education, and it wasn't so much a choice as maybe a practicality back then when I, first of all, I had to leave my country because of conflict and a war situation. One of the things I didn't explain at the beginning is I'm originally Palestinian. So I left for college education because at the time there was a lot of disruption to education in Palestine. And so I came to study in the US for my college education. And the choice was made really based on, what are my career opportunities in terms of, based on what I choose. And so I decided to go into the technical field. And I studied during that time, my university offered a major called computer systems and business information systems. So that's what I focused on back then. And I focused on it specifically out of interest because of, it was an interesting time during the 90s and, the tech boom, and there was a lot going on in terms of the technical field. And I saw, based on, experience in the world and experience from the advice that you get through your university system, that this is, something that offers job opportunities, and that, it is a field that would be able to advance in. So that's how I chose that back then. And then from there, upon graduation, I took on several jobs that basically were based on that college education, but also continued to grow my skills and abilities on the job as well.
Thank you, Naela. Okay, so I think that your path was very interesting so far. And my next question for you is, what was your first job and how did you feel about that?
Yes, thank you. So my first job upon completion of university education was working for a company that developed their own software systems. And so the software was what we call an in-house system, right? So the company developed it from beginning to end and then sold it to customers, and then it provided customer support for that software. So my job was in the customer service department for that company, and it was providing software to that, providing support to that software system that they offered. But also part of customer support was what they tasked us with was to actually also go to customer sites and do more customized installations and then configure the systems to match what their company and what their environment needed. So there was a little bit of, it wasn't just off the shelf software. We had to install it and do some more customization to it. So that opportunity of having to support the system from when we were housed at the company, and then go to the customer side and support it and install it, it was great, right? Because it gave us opportunity to see it in action and see what customers needed. But it also gave me, it also was annoying because you could see that, software that has bugs and things that don't work in it are costly to the customer, costly to the organization, to the company that offers it. And, so there's a cost to not just financial cost, but cost to reputation, cost to willingness for the customer to use it, etc. So it was a good insight in seeing how addressing things early on pays later on in the development process. So that was my first job, and it impacted how I chose my my career later on in terms of what to focus on.
Nice to hear that. So it was like a bit of IT technical support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Okay, Nara, my next question for you is, you are a woman in tech, right? And I would like to know what you like the most about technology.
Yeah, I like a lot of things about technology, and I can tell you things that impacted me very personally. I like the accessibility that it affords us, right? To be able to access anyone we want pretty much any time of the day. I remember back, when I left my home country back in the 90s, and trying to place an international phone call, just to call back to my family and check on them. I mean, it was a lot of money. I do recall that. I mean, we're talking like, hundreds of dollars spent on just the on phone calls and on a student budget, which was not available at the time. And so what I do like is, it broke down a lot of those barriers, right? And so it made us a lot more accessible to each other. I know, for example, what I used to, I'm talking about these phone calls that cost hundreds of dollars back then, but, I know none of us, a lot of calls are now done, with voice over IP. So they cost us zero now, and we can call to anywhere we want in the world. So that's really what I've seen is the transformation that it has done to us, and allowed us to do things like this, Choukouriyah, where I can talk to you from thousands of kilometers away. Another thing that has really made us all think a lot about technology in the last 2 years is having gone through a global pandemic. Can you imagine what we've gone through the last 2 years, but also take the internet and technology out of it, right? So it would have been a lot more isolated as a world, it would have felt. So I feel like it had, technology has enabled us to connect better, but also with that connection, it's allowed us to reduce the isolation and barriers that existed previously.
Yes, you're right. Because without internet, I don't know how everything could be possible. How we can even work remotely and learn new things and connect with our friends and so forth. So yes, internet has indeed a great impact on how we live today. So Naela, my next question for you is, what are any do you have any project or any achievement you have done in tech and for which you are very proud of?
Thank you. So I've been thinking about this. One of the things that my career has led me to, after what I described at the beginning with software and going forward, one of the things that I got involved in when I joined ICANN, first when I joined ICANN, I worked in its one of its very technical departments called the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, which is the IANA. And the IANA, really, its job is to manage unique identifiers on the web, in order to enable all of us to access the web without interfering with each other and without having duplicate things that, you're trying to access one IP address and I'm trying to access it and we're expecting different results from it. So that does not happen. And so IANA focuses on managing domain names, and specifically top-level domain names like US, that for the US, MX for Mexico, PS for Palestine, and so on. And then but also the generic ones like the .com and the .info and .org. So that's the domain names part of it. And then they also manage IP addresses. This is the allocation of IP addresses to be further allocated around the world. And then protocol parameters, which is those unique identifiers for technical like software applications, et cetera, to use on the web, on the internet. And so that work with IANA allowed me to get involved in something called internationalized domain names. So up until, let's say I would say around 2008, 2009, on the web, we had these top-level domains. And when I talk about top-level domains, I'm talking about everything that the last dot, everything after the last dot in a domain name. So for example, www.icann.org, right, would be the last with the top level domain in this case. And so up until about, as I said, 2008, 2009, all of our top level domains that existed in the world were ones that are based on ASCII or Latin characters. So you had to basically read and write a language that's based on Latin characters in order to be able to type your domain name. So we didn't have domain names in Arabic, for example, or Chinese, or Cyrillic, which is the script that's used by the Russian language, for example, or any of anything written in the Devanagari scripts, which is what a lot of the Indian languages are based off. And so the project that I feel most rewarded about with ICANN that I've got to work on was developing rules for which of these characters are going to be used in internationalized domain names when internationalized domain names become part of the internet and become a reality. And so in 2009, 2010, those domain names started to show up on the internet. And so you have now domain names that end, the top level, instead of it being only based on Latin scripts, they are, there's Arabic domain names, there's Russian domain names, Chinese, and so on. And that's really important because for me personally, when I am typing a domain name, when I'm trying to access a website, I read and write both English and Arabic. And so in English, we read and write from left to right. And then in Arabic, we switch all around and then we do right to left. And so you know, simple things like if I'm trying to go to my, a news website that I like to read, an Arabic news website. You know, it used to be that you actually, in order to get to the website, even though you're expecting to read all your news in Arabic and understand everything on the web page in Arabic, still to get to the website, you have to switch to English on your keyboard and enter your domain name, you know, in left to right in English characters. And so that's, you know, while that for you and I, maybe that's natural, we can switch very quickly. You know, for somebody like my father's age, why should he have to know and switch to some, you know, from English characters to Arabic characters just to access his news website? And so it's beyond just like, you know, the label and the domain names, it's accessibility to the internet. It's making sure that we all have an equal opportunity to get on the internet and use it and have it work for us as well. And not just be a resource that's only you know, workable or usable for those who can work with the technology and understand its limitations at the time when it was introduced and why it was things started in Latin-based characters. So that's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is once those domain names started to get introduced in that as top-level domains, we quickly needed to develop rules of what characters are allowed to be used in domain names. And so when the characters were only based on ASCII, so scripts, it was really easy because you could think of the characters as A through Z, and then it was like a really small set. It was up to, I think it's 60. It's a very small set, I think, of what characters could be used. But once you become, you look at different languages and different scripts, the set becomes a lot bigger. And so we basically, one of my responsibilities was to work with generation panels in each communities to start working on, you know, what are the rules that we're going to develop for each generation panel was going to develop for its community to decide what script, which letters in that script were going to be allowed to be used in domain names. So it was, you know, some of it was technical, some of it was linguistic, some of it was just understanding how different scripts work and the properties of different characters. So that was one of the projects that I was involved in ICANN, and it was very gratifying. And besides the fact that it was, you know, the actual work of coming up with those characters that should be and allowed to be used in domain names, it was just it was so humbling to meet people from around the world that felt just as strongly and were willing to invest their time and their effort in defining these rules and these character sets for their language script.
Thank you so much, Naela, for this very detailed explanation about one of your achievements. I think it has something to do with the universal acceptance, right?
Absolutely. Yes, thank you. If you want me to go on universal acceptance, I will, because that became like problem number 2. So now you have domain names in different languages that are on the internet, and they exist. And so now universal acceptance has to deal with, okay, so these domain names are reality. Now we need all software, we need to be able to recognize them and use them, and hence the acceptance piece. So if I'm sending you an email, and I'm sending you an email, and my email address is naela@icann.org, but I'm writing in Arabic characters, and then it comes to you, and then your software application all of a sudden decides, I don't know what this is about, and so it might block my email to you, or not deliver it at all, or throw it in junk, or just not be able to parse the address. So that's one of the issues now, and that's not restricted only to domain names in different languages. It also is an issue in domain names that are not maybe the expected or the traditional domain names. So if you think back to the internet, maybe 10, 15 years, there was a lot of software pieces or software packages and email applications kind of had like a predefined list of these are the acceptable top-level domains, for example. So they had the .com, info, org, the ones that existed back then for the generic top-level domains. And then they had all the ones that existed for country top-level domains, because country codes have existed a lot longer, right? But then these software applications and email packages, they thought of the list as a static list that didn't change, whereas that list is a dynamic list and it actually is constantly changing. And that's one of the responsibilities of ICANN, is to administer that what's called the root zone and what exists in the top level in the list of top level domains. And it is a living list, right? Countries pop up, countries go away, and so that list needs to be updated. Generic top level domains come up and then they go away, and so that it constantly fluctuates and updates. And so universal acceptance has to deal with and that's another big set of activities within ICANN, is dealing with being aware of, what are being aware of software applications and their need to be able to recognize new top-level domains and internationalized email addresses and internationalized domain names, and be able to accept them and not just throw them away or not be able to parse them just because they're in a different script that it doesn't know how to deal with.
Thank you so much, Naela. I think that I really learned a lot from your quick presentation of universal acceptance. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to ask a question. Today you are known as a woman in tech and expert in internet governance. But most of the time, we know that tech communities are known to be of a great help for those who are in technology, because they help them to grow quickly. So my question for you is to know whether you have been a part of a technical community before, and how does that help you?
Yeah, so I won't point to a specific technical organization or anything like that, but I would say that I've been fortunate enough in that the groups that I've worked with, whether it's technical teams that are, staff members that I get to work with, or technical teams that are within the community, because as you know, our work with ICANN is working with people in the community. They're not necessarily ICANN employees that I'm working with directly, but it's, people that work with different organizations, and that we're collaborating together on things. For the most part, I've found that in the technical field, I think it's and especially when working, I'm really actually kind of sorry to say this, but especially when working with teams around the world, I think the barriers are thankfully the barriers are lowered and people are a lot more accepting. And I rarely feel like it's an environment where we as women have to assert ourselves or emphasize that, we know just as much and we have just as much to contribute. I find that working internationally that way, it's a much more accepting environment. And I could think of very, very few occasions where I felt like I am being blocked or not allowed to contribute because I am, because the fact that I'm a female, but there's a male engineer next to me who can contribute better. I haven't felt that in this environment, I have to say. There's been, interesting incidents along the way. Like I do remember one time somebody coming and giving me a pencil a mechanical pencil. Do you know what those are? The ones that you put like the one that you put a lead in and then you advance it, right? Like a mechanical pencil. And I remember somebody coming up to me one time and giving me a mechanical pencil and saying, "Hi, you're a woman engineer. I think you need, you can't just use a regular pencil. You need to have a pink mechanical pencil." I'm like, okay. And so, there's like these little things that happen, where I think you're reminded how other people think and why, but at the same time, I think he was telling me, he's seeing me as an equal and I need a pencil. I don't know. I do see, I did run into specific situations where, you're reminded that, perhaps the other person isn't thinking of you as equal or not taking you as serious, maybe, but for the most part, I think it's been a wonderful, accepting field to be in. And again, as I said, I always do appreciate working internationally because I feel like that's when our teams work very well together. And I think none of these artificial barriers that seem to pop up exist. I think we all work equally and contribute together to whatever project we're working on. I don't know if that's good or that answers your question, but that's where I'm headed with that one.
Sure, thank you so much. I really love the mechanical pen example. My question now is to ask you, Naela, did you encounter any challenges during this long path throughout your career? Have you encountered a challenge? And if yes, how did you overcome them?
Yes, thanks. I would say not challenge. I would say the hardest part of my my career was it was hard and challenging at the same time, but also rewarding. So it wasn't I don't look at it in a negative way in any way. But I think when I decided to start a family, but also continue to be a working person, that's when it was suddenly the responsibilities shifted and the attention, I was very used to giving, 100% or 150% of my attention, always to my work. And I wanted to continue to give that 150%, but I also realized that I have a big part of my life now that has changed that also needs 150% attention all the time. So I think that it was figuring out that balance once I started a family. And I had a lot of things that, I traditionally that were instilled in me and, in terms of roles and, what the traditional role for a woman was and what the traditional role for a man was. And I had to overcome that very, very quickly because in our family, we needed to figure out what makes most sense in terms of supporting the family financially, and what makes most sense in terms of supporting the family, and the children and keeping things going, and figure out a compromise there very quickly. It didn't matter, whether it was a man's role to do this or a woman's role to do that. So I would say, as a woman, that was the time when, and I think it's because I started my family later on. I was already established and kind of had my way of wanting to keep going with my career. And so finding that compromise not really compromise, but like merging the two together and continuing to give equally and fully to both.
Great, thank you. Thank you for answering to this question. And my last but not least, the last question I have for you today is, since this series is for young women and girls in tech, do you have any advice, a precious tech advice for their career? Something that can help them to move on, to grow quickly and effectively?
Yeah, thank you, Choukouriyah. I would say in this, as I think about this and think back, I would say for us as women, it's really important for us to be confident in what we want and go for it. I'll give you a little example. I noticed recently, I would say in the last few years, when we have a job ad that's posted, for example, and I forward it to colleagues and say, hey, will you please consider this? When I send it to women, when I send it to men, they'll say, oh yeah, this is interesting, I might think about it. They look at it and they say, okay, yeah, that could possibly fit within my goals, I'll take a look. When I send it to women, they really study it like really, really good, and they go through all the requirements, and they really, really like think very thoroughly about it. But then they'll like come to that one requirement. They'll say, not sure that I 100% meet this requirement. And a long list of requirements, right? So it might, it's a full job advertisement, right? So it's like a whole page of, here's what the job is and here's what's expected. And so you'll find that, we zero in on, maybe I meet 99.5% of everything, but I'm really like, I'm going to tell you that I don't meet this 0.5%. And I admire that, right? Because I think we're really diligent and we're really good and we're really specific, and we'll give you a straight answer. Here's where things stand, and here's where what I meet and what I don't meet. And I think that's wonderful. But I also think we take away a little bit from ourselves, because a man might be willing to say they meet the requirements when maybe they meet 50% of the requirements, whereas a woman is a little bit more hesitant to say, sure, I'll try, and yes, I do meet the requirements. So perhaps I'm generalizing or stereotyping a little bit, but I think we're harsher on ourselves, and I think we need to become kinder to ourselves and be willing to take a chance on ourselves. And then also to speak up and let people know, what we want, right? So nobody's going to be an advocate for ourselves more than we are, right? So being able to, let our peers, let our supervisors, let our community, let our family know what our goals are. And so that when that one project comes up that we've voiced, this is something that we're interested in, when that comes up, it may not come up in the next day or two or week or two, but when it does come up, we are in their brain as, oh, Choukouriyah was interested in this, let me check with her and see if she wants to work on this. Because a lot of times we see opportunities and we think, oh, it'd be good to be involved in this, but we don't always let the people around us know that we are interested, and then therefore planting that seed in their head that when something comes up, we're ready to jump on it. And that lack of ability, lack of willingness to speak up, I think that's sometimes what could possibly leave us behind, because it's not known to people around us that we want these things, and therefore we see other people advancing, and when we're not, and you're like, wait, I was interested in this, or I could have easily done this as well. So speaking up and being our advocate for ourselves is my advice. If I go back 30 years, I'd say the same thing. I wish I would have done more of it, and I would ask people and women to do that going forward.
Okay, thank you, Naela. So self-confidence and speaking up. Thank you so much for today. I'm done with my questions, and I think that it's your turn now to ask me your questions. So over to you.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank you for how you do such a good job of like picking up and summarizing. I want to tell you that that's a great asset. So thank you so much. So switching to you, Choukouriyah, I'd like to ask you a few questions here about you as a young woman in tech. And so let me ask you a little bit about who you are, Choukouriyah, if you could introduce yourself to us. And we'll start with that question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Naela. So I'm a computer scientist, but let's say that I have a bachelor degree in computer science. and I have a 2 year professional experience in web developing, mobile developing, and now I'm really focused on data engineering.
Excellent, excellent. And how did you, so you finished your college degree. How did you decide to go into that field? How was that your choice in education, then career?
Thank you for the question. I got into tech approximately 5 years ago when I was about to start university. Firstly, I knew that I would be an accountant. I love accountancy. I love everything related to numbers, digits. So I didn't know much about technology, but I was like anyone who is about to start university. I was doing my researching, and then I just found one day I just found like a sentence, technology is the future. And I was just curious about that. But what is technology, and what can I do in this field? How can I help my world, my continent, my country using my skills in technology? And I just applied for a tech school in my country, and fortunately, I got a scholarship to study for a 3 year. So it was at the beginning, it was just to try, but I think that it has been the best decision I have ever taken in my life.
Excellent, excellent. And now that you've made that decision and you got into it, how do you feel about it? What do you like about it, working in that field?
Yes, personally, I think that technology, like you said earlier, is very accessible and flexible. Like in tech, people always think that technology is very hard, it's for men, it's always about mathematics, strong programming skills. But technology is very vast. Like in tech, we have a lot of careers you can embrace without really being strong in math, strong in physics, or strong in anything related to programming. And also, I really love the fact that technology can help us to improve our day-to-day lives. We can use technology to create solutions to the real-world problems. I really love that.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Thank you for that. So then what are your plans in going forward with this? What are your next steps? Do you have a specific project that you're working on or that you hope to get into? Do you want to continue your studies in the technical field? What are your plans going forward?
Thank you for asking the question. Actually, I'm looking for a scholarship to study my master degree in data engineering. So in the meantime, if I find a professional project or an internship or a job I can work on as a data analyst entry level, it will be very fantastic, very helpful for me.
Great. Data engineering is what you want to continue
Yes.
going into. Okay, so it's good to know. Okay. So if you had, that younger person sitting next to you that you were mentoring about whether or not to go into tech, is there a specific advice you'd give them? What's one advice you would say, hey, this is good, but be aware of this, or here's my advice to you?
Yes, I will say to that person that consistency is the key. Tech is very broad, so I will advise this person to wisely choose or select a career and focus on it, work in it, and put in the hard work.
Yeah, that's great. And that's so true. And what would you, if What would you wish from other women that are, you know, have already been in the work field longer than you, or have had a little bit more experience? What would you wish from them to give in terms of advice as you are, you know, starting your career, have the whole world still ahead of you? What's one advice you wish you, or one piece of information you wish you could get out of these women?
Women like you, right? Okay. I always say something. Breaking the bias, making more women join the tech field, the tech space is not about talking, you know, it's more about taking action. So personally, I really love that the women who have already been for a long time in tech, I would love them to make more actionable plans, share resources, technical resources, create Twitter spaces, explain, I don't know, yeah, they can organize many workshops and explain to girls technical concepts, leadership concepts, uh, something that is very tangible, something that is very useful, technical concept that can help girls and women to succeed more.
You know, so true. I'm so glad you're picking on that, right? Especially this month with International Women's Day has just passed, and we're reminded of it. That is so true. I couldn't agree with you more. And thank you for the reminder that I think you're right. The accessibility we have to things like Twitter and access to conferences and the connections we've made throughout the year is something that we need to be aware of. You know, it's not just something that we've finally figured out. We have a responsibility to figure out and pass it on. With the little bit that we were able to figure out, it's very challenging. And I'm glad you used the term breaking the bias. I know this is this year's hashtag for International Women's Day. So excellent, yes, and let's keep working on it together. So thank you so much, Choukouriyah. I think this ends what I wanted to ask you today. And I found this really delightful and really helpful. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Naela. I really enjoyed our session today. So that wraps up the session of Talking Tech, Women and Careers in ICT. Once again, thank you, Naela, for joining. I really enjoyed our chat today, and thanks to our viewers for watching.
Thank you very much, Choukouriyah. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.